HIV and AIDS status to their employees. Whereas the question whether the university has been fulfilling the desire, the question to be answered is whether the question being asked is on the question we have at hand, which is whether...
It's the weekly debate that keeps them sparring.
The intention of National Encounter is to bring you very topical and debatable issues that are of vital national importance.
So could you show us now that there are no hard feelings for the handshake?
National Encounter, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Be part of the debate every week. Find out the next issue. Experience the exchange. National Encounter, it's a must. It's the program that everyone is talking about on SLBC radio and television.
It's a weekly debating show that deals with interesting, debatable issues that you have been thinking about for a very long time.
National Encounter, real people, live in studio, tough topics, loaded questions.
And the question is, should employees reveal their HIV and AIDS status to their employees? Whereas the question whether the university has been fulfilling the desire, the question to be answered is whether the question being asked is on the question we have at hand, which is whether...
It's the weekly debate that keeps them sparring.
The intention of National Encounter is to bring you very topical and debatable issues that are of vital national importance.
So could you show us now that there are no hard feelings for the handshake?
National Encounter, every Thursday at 7 p.m. Be part of the debate every week. Find out the next issue. Experience the exchange. National Encounter, it's a must.
Welcome to another edition of National Encounter. My name is Samuel Castle. National Encounter, we deal with some of the most topical issues in the country at any given time. Well, for the past 2 weeks, perhaps, you may have been hearing journalists talking all over the place about the 1965 Public Order Act. The 1965 Public Order Act has been an issue for journalists for a very long time. In fact, since 1965. It was in 1965, well, on 31st December to be precise, that a new law came into existence, the Public Order Act. In its entirety, it wasn't for any bad reasons. It was, in fact, to ensure that there was sanity. It was looking forward to having peaceful coexistence amongst people in communities and in the country as a whole. But as a matter of fact, there were specifics of the 1965 Public Order Act which some people did not like, including journalists. They particularly were not at peace with Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act because it made libel a criminal issue. It criminalized libel. And for libel, one could be fined or imprisoned. In fact, Part 5, Section 26 says, the 26th line says, any person who maliciously publishes any defamatory matter, knowing the same to be false, shall be guilty of an offense called libel and liable on conviction to imprisonment for any term not exceeding 3 years or to a fine not exceeding 1,000 leones or both. 1,000 leones now looks like nothing, but one may go to jail or may be imprisoned for libel, which is still a criminal issue in this country. Libel is a criminal offense in Sierra Leone. Journalists think libel should be a civil matter, and the truth must be a defense. Even as that, the truth is not a defense here because it says on the trial of an offense of libel against sections 26 or 27, I just read the 26th line, section 26, it says the accused having pleaded such plea as hereinafter mentioned, the truth of the matters charged may be inquired into, but shall not amount to a defense, unless it was for the public benefit that the said matters charged should be published, and to entitle the accused to give evidence of the truth of such matters charged as a defense to such charge, it shall be necessary for the accused in pleading to the said charge to allege in writing the truth of the said matters charged in the manner now required in pleading a fair comment and justification to an action for a defamation, and further to allege in writing that it was for public benefit that the said matters charged were in question. Now, that is why we're here today. Many years after the 1965 Public Order Act, many years after Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act came into existence, many have the thinking that it is quite obsolete as the 1,000 fine it stipulated. Today, there are several ways and means of ensuring that justice is achieved. And criminalizing libel to a very great extent could go as far as gagging the press. That is what journalists believe. There's a huge campaign right now, and many institutions are involved in the campaign for the Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act to be expunged. I have two journalists here this evening to debate the issue, and the question we're asking is whether Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act must be expunged. Part 5, that area that makes libel a criminal offense, whether it must be expunged. Two journalists are here to debate the issue today. One is spokesman of Press Freedom Committee, Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, SLAJ. His name is Tanu Jallow. On the other hand is Soriba Samura. He is a journalist who used to work for Torchlight newspaper. He continues to write, even though not entirely attached these days. Whilst Tanu Jallow, who is an active journalist with Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, says yes, Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act, which criminalizes libel, must be expunged. Soriba Samura says it mustn't be expunged. It should stay, meaning that perhaps it is quite appropriate, just as it was in 1965. And to say it is obsolete might not be true at all. We'll get to know why they think the way they do. First, to Tanu Jallow. You are of the thinking that the 1965 Public Order Act must not be expunged. It must remain in the law books. As a matter of fact, the 1965 Public Order Act is a thing that journalists have been crying against since it was introduced, since it came into fruition, since it came into action in 1965. And unto this day, journalists have not been successful in calling for that particular law to be changed or perhaps expunged. Why do you think you will be successful now? And why are you of the conviction that the 1965 Public Order Act must in fact be expunged?
Thank you very much, Mr. Balcastle. As a matter of fact, the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists was in fact founded on the basis that the 1965 Public Order Act, especially Part 5, which criminalizes libel, should be expunged or should be repealed. Over 40 years since SLAJ was actually founded, we still have been fighting to get this law repealed. But now, more than ever before, we have seen remarkable improvement, but also support from those we expect to help us repeal the law. But also we have seen some huge support from the international community. All of them have said at one time or the other that the law is outdated. In fact, even the Law Reform Commission said that the law is outdated, especially the sedition side. It's outdated. And so why do we continue to keep a law that all of us know that is bad? And you just explained Section 26, for which if you are found guilty of having defamed anybody, you could run a jail term of 3 years. That is knowingly doing that. When you move to Section 27, it tells you that where in fact you did not do that knowingly, you could still be convicted and be jailed for 2 years. So this is not a matter of saying either or. So even where you knowingly did that, you could go to jail for 3 years. And even where you did not do that knowingly, you could still go to jail for 2 years. So that tells you how bad this law is. And that's just one aspect of the law. Other aspects have to do with, for example, how it inhibits businesses or investment into the media landscape, but also how it prevents journalists from actualizing themselves, from being the professionals that they want to be, from being able to specialize, because the more you think of this law, hovering around you, the more likely you are to feel very, very, timid, but also constrained in actualizing yourself as a journalist. So all of that put together, you would agree with me that it's a bad law and it must be repealed.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Tanu Jallow, spokesman, Press Freedom Committee, Sierra Leone Association of Journalists. Thank you very much. I move over to you, Soriba Samura. you are of the thinking that the 1965 Public Order Act must remain in our law books.
Must be.
Do you think it's a good law?
It's a good law.
Why are you of your thinking?
Thank you very much, Val. I think it's a good law. Talking about, Tamu said the law is outdated, and anything that is outdated could be updated. I think what I think, and a lot of what other people feel with me, is that the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists must be advocating for the law to be updated, because if you talk about outdated law, it means could be updated. And I want to bring in again the argument of saying the law has been there and he has explained the consequences, the penalties, and I tell you, the advocacy of the law to be repealed or expunged is a recipe for chaos, it's a recipe for anarchy, it's a recipe for triple lawlessness. Because I know, and me and you know, everybody know that the law has been working since 1965. As you rightly said, the fine is not commensurate right now. We are talking about millions, and it was in millions, cents or something. But Val, I want to challenge Tano that if this law is repealed, we will go into total confusion, because there will no longer be complete respect for human rights, for one's privacy, complete respect for personalities, and so on. And I don't know. Tanu might not know, but I've been researching and I know, and I will tell you that there are a lot of other people out there waiting to just jump into this ship and just put everything off as a result of the repeal of this law, should that happen. So I believe, Val and the Tanu, that this law must stay, because we still need it. It's been working for us since 1965. All we need is an update of the law.
Thank you very much, Sir Basamura. He has made some very good points, which perhaps you may want to make analysis of or go against completely. He says the law is obsolete, but must be updated. And perhaps where he sees the obsolete side is when he talks about monies that are of no value these days. That's where they must be updated, not about the law in its entirety, because it's a good law, because the situation perhaps in 1965 is the same as it is today. People are still people with the tendency to behave as they did in 1965. He has also said that the law must not be expunged because it will bring the state into anarchy. And he has also said people will invade other people's privacy, and there may be a breach of the peace. That is what his points are.
I actually don't know where he's coming from, but there are other countries who have done with especially the criminal libel law. They still are in existence. If anything, they have had some serious boosts to their democracy in terms of their profile. Their human rights standing is taller than Sierra Leone, of course. And we only have two countries right now that have the defamation law, which is Sierra Leone and Canada. But you can agree with me, but the rate at which it is being used here, you can't compare it to the way it is being used in countries like Canada. And you have only Sierra Leone and Canada. Yet all other countries who have done away with this law are doing extremely very well. We have not seen any chaos, any anarchy in the absence of the criminal libel law. So I don't know where he's coming from with that argument to say, I mean, the absence of the criminal libel law, we're going to have anarchy where, no. Now, let me give you a simple analogy of what we are actually trying to get people to understand. Now, since 1965, this law has been with the politicians. They have used it anyhow. We are saying now, trust us as journalists to prove to you that we can be very responsible. That, as a matter of fact, in the last 2 decades, we have had about 40 journalists brought before the court of law under this law. You see that? That in itself is not good for the media environment. In itself is not good for investment in the media landscape. In itself is not good for the country's standing in terms of democracy, in terms of human rights, and all of that. Do we want to continue to be seen as one of the countries that are still at the back burner, in this day and age of global democracy? No, we don't want that. And the issue of saying that if especially Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act, if it were to be repealed now, journalists will behave anyhow. It's not true. That's not true. In fact, in the last 2 decades, we have seen a huge improvement in terms of professionalism in the media. You and I know what I'm talking about. I mean, we have all been journalists, and we have all seen how people have gone to the university and have had training in media and journalism. Some have had training outside the university, and they are conducting themselves well. We are not saying that we are perfect as it is right now as journalists, but we are saying we could be trusted in the absence of that law to be able to conduct ourselves well, and to be able to build confidence in the public that no, in the absence of this law, there is not going to be any anarchy.
I don't know whether you go this way this time.
Tanu has said we, the journalists, can be trusted. And he has also highlighted of about 40 journalists jailed or who were arrested or so. That only shows Tanu and the rest of
No, they were actually brought before because they were not jailed actually.
All right,
it doesn't mean that it doesn't mean that there were grounds for them to have been brought before the
yes,
we are saying
those
are all instances of how the law has been abused before now
and
by politicians.
Are also instances that
and let me tell you something. Probably you don't know this. Now this is the only law, especially the sedition side, under which a politician can only call up the police to say Tanu Jallow has put out a report on me, and that report is likely to cause harm to my reputation. And on that alone, you could be arrested and locked up in a cell for like 3-4 days before you are released after 3 days without any charge. So we are saying it is wrong for journalists to be arrested anyhow and be jailed.
Now,
that is not good.
Libel comes from, the focus of libel comes from defamation. And defamation has 2 limbs, slander and libel. If journalists are to be allowed, if we are to be allowed...
Actually, libel and sedition.
Yes, that's true. That comes from that. If we are to be allowed to just go haywire in writing and doing defamation,
have we been going haywire?
Yes, of course. You have already told us about 40 people.
I am saying all those 40 journalists were actually arrested not because they did anything wrong, but because some politicians felt that they were doing their job and that what they did,
I am very sure it's because
what they did was coming against them.
I am very sure and I'm convinced that it was because they went against the law, and because Part 5 was there. That's why they were trapped. Otherwise, something else would have come out of what they wrote. But let me tell you, my brother, if we allow the seditious libel law to be repealed and not updated, rather, I think we are heading for something that has no head.
Now, when in 2001, Ghana was about to repeal the criminal libel law, all those arguments came up.
And what happened?
Yeah, here we are today.
And what happened in the end?
We have seen the Ghanaian economy, or we have seen the Ghanaian media grow exponentially when you compare them to any other country in the sub-region.
Are you saying the law was disturbing growth, economic growth?
Certainly.
And what's
see
happening
the amount of investment.
Was the law repealed?
Yes, it was. And I am saying since 2001, unanimously, it was unanimously repealed. Imagine all members of parliament. These are all politicians. But these are forward-thinking people.
Tell me
and they realized that it was bad for them to continue to keep that law.
How would you compare the journalism or journalists of Ghana and Sierra Leone when some things that some journalists in Sierra Leone are doing are not even comparable as to Ghana? I am saying to you, like when this case of Dr. David Tambayo came up, and that of the proprietor and the editor of the Observer, Mr. Jonathan Lee, when that case came up, and then the then special executive assistant to His Excellency the President, Madam Sylvia Blyden, said the criminal libel law was an excellent law by that time. You know why? People should not just be going around and writing whatever you think. And you know, if that law is repealed, that will also help these now journalists who do not want to do proper investigations before they come out with facts. to be doing what they are doing.
That's not true.
And I tell you that Tanu will have an
That's been alarmist. If anybody is being alarmist here, it is actually
and
you.
I'll tell you, if that law is repealed again, I'll tell you, Tanu, there will be some people amongst us that will not have anywhere to practice.
Tanu, he has made some good points which you have failed to
Yes,
counter
that's
properly.
true.
No,
He said if within the past years over 40 journalists have been charged with this law or under this law, it does mean people have been going against this.
No,
and it's scary that people have been charged under this particular law that journalists are clamoring to be expunged. If people have been breaching this law, it does mean there's every reason to be afraid that they may go haywire should it be expunged. So there is a reason to be wary of cause for this to be expunged when journalists are being charged with this.
Yes.
How many of them were actually convicted?
You said over 40.
No, I said 40 were actually brought before the court under this law.
Yes.
That is a clear case of how the law has been abused by politicians. Now, these people were brought before the court of law and they were released after 3 days because there was nothing to charge them with.
Is it because the Sierra
Yes.
Association of Journalists had to go there and plead?
Well, in most cases, because we actually are against the use of the criminal libel law. But if the courts or if politicians who had brought those journalists before the court under the criminal libel, if they had any proof, those journalists or most of them could have been jailed. I am saying how many of them were actually jailed. Now, if all of them brought before the court of law were actually jailed, then you have a point.
He may say these matters never really materialized. They did not take off because there were always pressure on the side.
They did not take off
pressure
because
coming from the association
they did not take off
on the affected people
They
to the
did-
extent that they waived.
No,
They
they
were
did not
waived.
take off.
Absolutely.
They did not take
But
off
if
because
the law
all they want,
were to be
especially
taken
politicians,
to the letter,
all they
some of those
wanted
people
was to
would have
get
been jailed.
journalists locked up for 3 days and they are satisfied. We have had instances where politicians who have had journalists jailed for like 3 days call up the Sierra Leone Association of Journalists to say, you know what, I just wanted to make sure that he was actually locked up for like 3
I really
days.
want you to go
So you
against
see
that point. That point. He says at the end of the day, when these journalists are picked up and brought to the CID for perhaps the preliminary investigations, it is just to intimidate
Yes,
and not actually.
that's a clear case
for
of
the-
intimidation.
But I think I should not call, and you should not call that intimidation,
It is.
Tanu, because I remember one of those cases when a minister was accused, in fact, allegedly that he called and the journalist was picked up, and then later on he was detained from Kenema, brought into Freetown, and so on. But I think Val asked you a very pertinent question. Is it because of the pressure or the apologies that large people went with to the CID that made these people to be released, or the law was
Or is it because there was no case?
There was no case in most
No,
instances.
there was. There was.
In
And
most
fact,
instances, there was nothing to prove.
There were cases, and I tell you
Now,
now
let
that
me tell you
some of
something.
those cases, if you
Even
go and
when this
review
is
them,
done,
Tanu, you will
even
know
when-
that
even
some
when
of
this
these
is done,
journalists went against the law.
Even those politicians and even the government, they know that, you know what, if we continue to do this, it's not going to bode well for our standing, you know, in terms of human rights, in terms of democracy and all of that. But they continue to do it.
No, but
now
remember,
let me tell you.
Amnesty International, sometime in October, released gave out a press release or something, totally bashing at the criminal libel law, saying, urging government to repeal that law.
Why do you think
you
so?
know why? Because something happened. This same scenario you're explaining. And because Amnesty International did not give a
Best practice.
footstool reason why this law must not be repealed, this is why the law is still exists.
So let me tell you something
And we
that
need
you
it.
don't know.
Amnesty is still here, and we are working with our own law, and the law must work for us.
Let me tell you something that probably he's not aware of. If anything, we have seen an overwhelming support from the government and from all politicians to have this law repealed. In fact, when we had the symposium on the 27th and 28th last month, you need to be there to see how the police actually came in to say, you know what? We were actually doing this, but what we have seen right now, we can't stand in the way of journalists to get this law repealed. And you have a representative from the Law Reform Commission, all of them.
What are the reasons? What are the tangible reasons?
It was about time. They all realized that it was about time we got rid of this law.
Because?
It was bad. it was not
Are you
doing
telling
us.
me a police officer could stand up and say this law that I am paid, that I am hired by the state to execute is a bad law? In front of you, Tanu?
Almost all
I
those
challenge
who went
that, and
there
I don't
said the
think-
law was a bad law.
Perhaps one question.
Even the office of the
I
Attorney General,
challenge
Minister
that,
of
and I
Justice,
can challenge you, perhaps anybody
even
else
the
who will
Minister
bring out
of
a proof
Information.
of that.
You must have heard
No,
him here.
the Minister of
say that
Information
the
Let's,
law
Let's-
is
let's,
bad.
let's look at section 26 again. It says, any person who maliciously
Maliciously.
publishes any defamatory matter, knowing the same to be false, shall be guilty of an offense called libel, and shall be liable on conviction to imprisonment for any term not exceeding 3 years.
Yes.
What we must be looking at here is malicious,
Malicious.
Who proved
and
that
also knowing the same to be false.
To be
That
false.
is,
And this
when
is
you
illegal.
willingly publish what you know is not true,
not true.
out of malice.
out of malice. Who
And
proves? who proves?
And let me tell you,
What are the
Tanu,
yardstick
this
do you
holds,
use
this holds,
to prove
this
that
holds
this
the absolute
this
tenet of
this
this
amounts
law.
to malice?
The maintenance of
That
this law
that
to be
certain
maintained
certain
is
certain
in this
content
one,
or
particularly
certain news item,
Section 26.
certain section of the news
Ask
item.
him. Ask him.
No, I mean,
Section 26.
He wants to
I'm
know.
giving you the
He
answer.
wants to know how you could prove that a particular content in a newspaper is malicious.
Val is simply reading and going through it. And if you read some of the things, and let me tell you, Tanu, if you were to
go to
through-
section 27.
He believes.
No,
He
Section
believes
26.
because
You-
because
go to
because
27.
because
He
Tano-
lost 27.
No, because
Section
Tano, before I
26.
go to 27, because
Right.
he believes that some people may use their newspapers
I
to
strongly
settle
do.
scores
I
with
strongly
people
do.
they do not like.
I strongly do.
Is,
And let
is
me
it the
add
use
there-
of some
Let me also add there.
to generalize
Section 26 is talking
your
about
argument?
those
In
people
itself
that
is
just
fallacious.
come out
You
and
can't
write
use one or
false-
two instances.
No, it's
You
not
can't use one or two instances to generalize your argument. To say, for example,
No,
all
but the thing has
journalists
been
are
happening.
reckless.
Can you
This is some-
imagine?
some.
Some.
No, it means you could have said
And
most
those-
journalists.
and
Those
You
who
have
use
talked
their
about
newspapers
40
to
people
settle
arrested.
scores in public are those who are brought to court and charged
Like the
under
40
this law.
people you told me about.
No, I am saying if 40 people were to be brought before the court,
No, 40 people
It-
were
it-
actually brought before the law. We are invited. We are sent to.
not because what they did was
Some
wrong,
were
but because
sent
they
to
thought
jail.
what they did was wrong.
Do you know
You
some
see
were
that?
sent to jail?
Not because what they did was wrong, but because politicians thought that what they did could impugn the
No,
character.
Tanu, no,
You see
Tanu.
that? Just because they
Politicians-
felt,
what do you mean
just
by
because they
politicians?
felt that what
Politicians
journalists
But this
has
is, not,
written-
this is not all about politicians.
It's not,
It's about
but-
any
It
member
is-
of the
it-
public,
it is
including
in-
a fellow
a
journalist.
fellow
I am
journalist
saying
and even
the
a
law
Garissa
most times
fan.
has been used
Even a Garissa,
by politicians.
this law
Go to
applies.
section 27.
No, let's talk about the 26.
No, go to
this
27.
law applies even to those that grow cassava.
27 is not
or
very
those
different
that-
from 26.
It's
No, no,
not
no,
too
it
different,
is.
exactly. It's not too different.
27 is almost like 26.
No,
But
no,
let me
it
tell
is.
you, but let me
Now
tell
it
you.
is saying
The
where-
only difference between 26 and 27 is that 26 hasn't the line knowing the same
Knowing
to be
the
false.
same to be
So
false
you see,
only.
now
there's
where
libel,
It's the
where
same.
information.
I am saying where even you know or you don't know rather where you don't know that what you may have written.
How many of those
It's-
40 journalists called to book all really told you that they did not know
How
what
would you
they were
how
writing?
would you write what you're not sure of?
How can you? You can't.
I don't get
You
it.
cannot.
How would you write something
You are
that you're
trying
not
to
sure
say
of?
if they knew
Now
what
let
they were
me
writing.
give you a typical example
Those
of how
40
this
journalists,
could be
do you know
a
how
case
many
of
of
you
them
writing
know what they
something
wrote?
that you are not sure of. Yeah? Now we have the Auditor General's report. Yeah? Now the Auditor General's report says that certain people who took money from NAC did not execute their duties. Now they took money for which they did not complete their job.
And are you telling me
I am-
that
I am-
those people did not know they did not complete their jobs? Is that what you're saying?
Even
No, they
the office,
knew it.
even the office
They
of,
knew it,
of
but they did it deliberately, so that is why the law should be there.
You did
The
not
law
allow
must
him to
be there.
finish.
yes,
Okay.
I was going to, now you take that document and run with it, write it and say, you know what, according to the Auditor General's report, so and so person failed to account for certain amount of money, and that in itself could imply that the person is corrupt.
No, it's
No,
not.
I'm coming.
No,
I am
it's not.
coming.
Section 29.
Code-
Section 29
code-
makes it clear.
code
It
imply-
says no person shall be criminally liable for the publication of defamatory matter in the following cases. And F says where the publication is contained in any communication between ministers, ministries, and public officers, members of the armed forces, public officers, and members of officers in the course of their respective duties.
Yes.
It is actually saying if it is taken
But
from
again-
some public
From
Yes.
document,
public
then,
document.
then
I am
there is
telling
no
you,
libel.
There's no libel. It does not
This
apply.
is the case.
Yeah.
This is
The law is
this,
clear.
this should be what
The law is clear.
should be the case. But we are saying even where you did that. Now you just agree with me. Even where you did that, but because a certain member of the public felt that what you had just published is likely to impugn the character, is likely to present them very badly in the eyes of the public, they could bring you.
No, as long as it's taken from a public
It's
document.
taken
I just said that where it is only when somebody felt that what you had published could impugn their character. That is enough for any politician to ask the police to pick up any journalist.
No,
and
but
jail
why
them.
must one
Is that malicious?
It is not.
Oh, it
But so
is.
you see,
No, it is.
it is not.
Val,
How could
let
that
me
be
tell
malicious?
you
No,
that
it's not
it
malicious.
is.
It is not malicious. How could that be malicious?
If it is taken from a public
How
document,
could that be
Yes,
malicious?
I have said so.
Yes.
If it is taken from a public document, what I'm saying is malicious here.
Even
When
where you are
very
able
well
to
know-
prove.
very well, if you know that, even if it's taken from a public document, again, we have a very catchy trick there. Please make sure, if you, the journalist, if I, the journalist, I publish exactly what was taken from that document.
If it's an
no
extract
problem.
or
If
an
it's
excerpt.
An excerpt. Good. But if you
you
go and
wouldn't be
form your
criminally
own
liable
opinion,
because it
if
is
you
here
go and
in
form
section
your own
29.
opinion on top
You
of
will
what
not be
was taken
criminally
from the
liable for the
document, it
publication
becomes a libel.
of the information
And this is
matter.
what exactly
uh,
what
in-
the-
in the
and
following
this is
cases.
exactly what those
when the law
40
reform
people
when the
were.
law reform person was presenting was making their presentation, he made, in fact it was he who made it abundantly clear that under 27, even where you did not know that what you published or could injure the reputation of somebody, and you did not do that maliciously, you could be if you are found guilty under that section, you could be jailed for 2 years. So
Yes,
you are
because
saying
you failed to
but-
go further than what you know.
No!
This is the point. If
No!
you are taking an excerpt
That is
or an
not the
extract
case.
from any public official, you have to do.
You are beginning to sound. You are beginning to sound as if you are infallible. We are
you
human
have to
beings.
do another.
There are times when we make mistakes.
No, we
so
know
those
human.
mistakes must
This
not
law
be
is
taken
meant for
against
human beings.
us.
Stano, this law is for
So
human
you see
beings.
that, and we have had instances where
It is
people
true.
make silly mistakes,
This
and
law
those
is for
things have
human
been taken
beings,
against them.
and therefore
we are saying
human
that's bad.
beings must take this
The
law
manner
very
in which the
seriously,
law has been
because
used
this
over the
law
years
has to be
is
used by
bad.
us.
Now let me tell you the other side of the law. We have just limited
Sano,
this
must
to
your
how-
mistake be considered when you've mistakenly done something that has injured the reputation
other person's
of somebody? A reputation that somebody has
Shouldn't.
taken years to build is ruined in a day through the mistake of some person who failed to do his assignment.
You are saying lawyers don't mistake, right?
I'm not saying that.
No,
I'm
you are
asking.
saying doctors don't mistake, right?
Just asking you.
No, that is the case. You
No,
are saying those people
there
don't
is-
mistake.
there
And
is
this
a-
is the problem we
there is
have.
a technical-
If a journalist were to make a mistake, and you and I agree that this was actually a genuine mistake, and for this they have been brought before the
Sorry,
court,
there's nothing
and they
like
have been
genuine
jailed because it is.
There is
There
nothing-
are.
in this libel
There
law,
are
there is
genuine
nothing
mistakes.
like genuine mistakes.
No, there are.
If
You
you,
see,
go beyond
because under
investi-
this law,
if you
because
go beyond,
under this law-
if you go beyond investigating some of the pieces that those journalists write,
Because
valuing
it is
those that-
under this law,
on
even
your
where
account,
your
this law
mistake
will
is
be
said to be
because
genuine,
there
it
are
is not considered to be
intentional
genuine.
mistakes, and therefore the criminal
You-
libel
you-
law
you see
does
what I'm
not
talking
allow
about?
for intentional
Even
mistakes.
where
Intentional
your
mistake
mistake is
is
said to
not
be
the
genuine,
criminal libel
under
law.
this law,
Correct.
it is not. Now, the only
How does one make a genuine mistake as a professional
Can you
journalist?
please tell us?
Because this is something you're going to write. This is something that will
Fine.
permanently stay there.
fine.
For instance, you wouldn't say the same for radio or TV. It passes, and sometimes one does not get to hear it.
Correct.
That is why sometimes.
That is not enough.
Well, that is why it is not as tough as something that is printed that could be kept for many generations.
Now listen.
You know,
When
it is
what- if-
permanently staying there.
If one were to be tried under the civil law, civil defamation, and then they are brought before the court of law, of course they certainly would have representations. Yeah. Now, even at that, if the journalist, the burden is on the journalist to prove that what they had written, is not enough to injure the reputation of someone.
Yeah, I disagree with that point. Let me tell you about civil and criminal law. I'm not a lawyer, but what I know, I think I will tell you categorically clear with all authority that if this law is repealed, it will even be a very, very tough point for access to justice for some people who cannot afford money. Now, when a law, I'm coming, when a law is removed from criminal to civil, that means you, the individual, has to hire a lawyer. But when it is criminal, the state takes up the matter. So how would you decipher that? If this law is repealed, Tanu, do you know the amount of people, ordinary people out there growing cassava, whose names are to be tarnished, or put otherwise, who do not have that money or
people
access
who
to
grow,
justice? So how
who
can
grow
justice
cassava
grow?
in those farms have their reputation tarnished by
Of course,
journalists?
everybody has a
You know,
reputation.
you know what
You are
you
only limiting
you know what
this
you're
reputation.
suggesting right now?
You are limiting your
You are
reputation
suggesting
thing
that,
to
you know
only
what?
politicians. But Tanu,
I have
somebody
practiced for
growing
15
cassava.
years and
I
I have
know.
never for
I know.
once brought,
What
you know,
I'm saying,
and I've
do
edited
not
serious
only,
newspapers.
do not only narrow
and I
your
have
argument
never been
to
brought.
only politicians.
I have
How
never
an
been brought
ordinary
before the court
man
of
who
law
cannot afford
under this law.
to pay a lawyer?
Because you're cautious.
Because you're cautious.
We have so many of the journalists who are very cautious
Tell
and
me.
who have conducted themselves very well.
Why should 40 journalists be
You see
brought
that?
to book because of this simple thing that just needs to be
It
followed?
just tells you how this law could be misused.
And it also
by
tells
people.
you how much people are ready to go beyond this law. This is why the law is always there, to have a break and put them on stand. That gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, please, this is what you should do. Operate between, among the tenants, be within the lines. And let me tell you, I was saying, Val, if Tanu does not know, I want to remind him that if this law is decriminalized and becomes a civil law, there will be no access to justice for most people
That's not
who cannot afford to hire a lawyer or the services of a lawyer in court.
That's not
But
true.
if it remains criminal as it is and should be, that's my opinion, and that's what I think. This law should remain a criminal law because
let me tell
it
you-
will also fight for the least man and not only a politician.
Some people
who can pretend
some people have the
to
thinking
hire a
that
lawyer.
it would be better if, as the journalists, us, strive for the 1965 Public Order Act, Part 5 particularly, to be expunged. There are particularly checks done in-house
Yes.
so that there is proper housekeeping
Fantastic.
as to who practices journalism and who doesn't, because of the fact that there are many people who may come into the profession just because they are intending on settling scores with particular people. Some people are simply on a mission. After it's completed, they go.
That's right.
That's correct. That's
That's
correct.
right.
Do you agree?
No,
Do
no,
you
that's right.
agree?
Let me tell
And
that's
if
right.
you say it's right, then why must this law
Now let me tell you
must not
something.
be there to
Journalism
guide
is a right-based profession.
those people that come with
I'm
intention?
coming. It's a right-based profession. What we have done now at large level is to be able to put some internal mechanisms to be able to, to regulate the conduct of journalists
Is it
across
only
the board.
now?
No, we have done that before now.
But
we have the
why-
IMC in place.
Rights-based.
We have
Rights-based.
now right-based. That is to say, if somebody wants to practice the profession, you could say it is his right to express his opinion. So you can't stop him from expressing his.
So
can't be
Mr. B from his window in his house could sit, think about something, a nice opinion, write it, and give
A
it to
nice
you to
one to
publish,
him.
even if it could destroy the reputation
No.
of his enemy.
No.
It should not be a problem.
No.
If you feel so aggrieved, you can go to the court
No.
and take civil
No,
action.
no.
Well, that's
That's
what you are
no.
advocating
No,
for.
no, no,
For
no,
the
that's-
law to be
that-
decriminalized
no, no.
and brought as a civil action.
No,
But it
that is
cannot
that is
work
that is
because
not the case.
there would be an exponential. Can I say there would be too much of problems that even large will not be able to solve. If
Oh,
this law
I'm
is
giving you
decriminalized.
instances
You might
where
not even be
countries
able to control some of
have
the countries
decriminalized this
who
law.
might be
Yes,
overusing
they are
this law.
doing very well. And
Are
here we are
we-
always
are we
very
in
backward.
similar circumstances?
Now, if let me say, if before 2001, and go read about the media landscape in Ghana, before 2001, where were they? Now, investment poured into the media, and we now have people putting $2, $3, $4 million into the media, as investment. That was
2002 to 2016. Now, you know how
2001.
many years now? Do you
You
know
see,
how many years it took them
we
to
have
be here?
seen the
where they are?
Ghanaian media
So we cannot
grow
compare that. I
exponentially,
think
and
we
with
need
that,
an update on
you
this
could
one.
get very professional people. Because as an investor, why would you go employ somebody and if they were to come to your business, they'll just run it down because they are not professional.
What I have not
No.
said, what I have not been able to say is the link between the huge investment in the media and the decriminalization of
Of
libel.
the libel.
When you decriminalize, and I can assure you this, we are going to see serious investment in the media.
How many media houses have suffered under this law?
So media houses?
Why? Like
It,
how many?
the quietness of
How many apart from for the people?
No. What you don't know is that you have media houses that have not been able to actualize themselves because they just almost always think that whenever they go beyond what they do right now, they could be trapped under this law. And
It's because they are failing to write the correct thing.
No.
That is the major fear of most of these people.
No.
Thank you for
That
bringing
is
up
not
that,
the
and
case.
that was going to be my
That
next
is not
point.
the case.
The reason why there's a large hue and cry, and let me tell you,
You just said
why
you
is
just
it
said
only
that
that
truth is not a defense. So
journalists
even
are
where
only doing this because
even
we
where
want-
I know
or
that
they
what I'm
want
going to
this law
publish is the
expunged
truth,
to
I
have
am
their own
likely
way.
to be brought
You
before
are not
the
thinking
court under
about
the
the
criminal law.
ordinary person whom this law
In
might
fact, this is
affect
about-
if it
this
is
is about
implemented.
Why would you be brought and charged under the 1965 Public Order Act and Part 5, the criminal libel law, when you've done nothing wrong?
You've done nothing wrong. How would that be?
You are asking me to tell you how the politician thinks.
No, it's not a politician.
No,
it's
I'm saying
everyone.
This
This
law
is-
is
this
not
is-
about only the politicians.
No, it
That's why
is-
I told
it-
you,
it has been
do not
used
narrow
most
your
times by
argument.
politicians.
No, Tamu, I
In this
disagree
country.
with you. Most times means,
You see?
most times does not mean all
It
the
has been
time.
used most
and this
times
law is for Sierra Leone.
by
and for
politicians
Sierra Leone.
because they have the power to call the police, to instruct them or order them to go
Sorry,
arrest
there
the
was
journalists.
only
They lock
one-
them
Is
up.
it because they have been targeted? Is it because on daily basis
Yes.
But if politicians are in
yes,
public
talk
offices,
and write about politicians?
About
Is it because
something they
No.
really know.
in Africa or in Sierra Leone, only politicians make the news?
the fundamental role of the media is to hold those in power to account. Yeah?
And
So
to
if
say
you
whatever you think about them,
No.
whether true or false.
how is that possible for
Well,
the
that
media
is
to
what
say
we are
whatever they
having
think?
out. Tell me, you should not
No,
tell me
we are
the
very
law
cautious
is
in the way.
No,
We have had
why?
several
How much
journalists
cautious?
in this country
How much cautious
who have
have
never
these
been
journalists
targeted
been?
because they have conducted themselves well. But what we are saying is that even those who have been targeted before now were not brought before or were not arrested because they actually meant to impugn the character of politicians.
But because they
Who-
went against the rules of the game.
What-
And the rules
what
of
do
the
you mean
game,
by they went
this
against the
seditious
rule?
libel law, which we are talking about not to be repealed. And let me tell you, Tamu, journalists are only limiting this thing to politicians. And
Who
that's
has,
the
who
real
has in
question.
recent times been convicted under the Public Order Act?
Again,
Who do you know?
that's what I'm saying. Again, the satisfaction politician or those who actually use the law, the satisfaction they get is to go arrest the journalists and lock them up for 3 years, and the next day they are released.
Like Paul Kamara?
Well, no. In the case of Paul Kamaras, it's a completely different case. You are asking me in recent times, so I just made reference to all
Was
those
he convicted under the Public Order Act?
Paul Kamara. Whether he was
When
convicted
he
or not.
called the late President Kabal a true convict.
Was he?
Whether he was convicted, he was.
He called the late President Kabal at the time,
Yes.
who was a sitting president,
Yes.
a true convict.
Now let me tell you, I'm not putting a case for
Was that a
Paul Kamara.
realistic statement for Paul
I'm not
Kamara
putting a
by
case-
them to have made?
I'm not making a case for him, but let me tell you what.
And Paul Kamara would have gone
Part of the job we
scot-free
do-
if this law were
part
not
of the
there
job-
to
part of the job we
caution
do
Paul Kamara.
is to be able to
And
interpret.
since he was arrested,
is to be able to
after
interpret
his
and get the
arrest
public
and
to understand
conviction also,
what obtains.
Paul
Now,
Kamara changed.
if that
Yes.
was what happened was that the commission of inquiry that actually found President Kabal, wanting to have, wanting.
Let's call it liable.
Yes, well, liable.
Liable?
Had what? The powers of what? The High Court.
How would
So,
you say that?
so yes. So
No.
what he
All
did
that-
was to tell somebody.
Conviction is what? Criminal?
It is indeed.
Yes.
Yes,
It is.
Liable is civil.
it's civil.
Civil.
So Paul Kamara went criminal for the president.
Yes.
And that was criminal.
And he was booked for criminal offense.
Yes.
Under this very public order act, which is very good for the country, because if
But
people like Paul Kamara
that's
were
just-
to be left to go their own way, would have gotten a lot of Paul Kamara.
That's just one instance.
So
Let me
isn't
tell you-
it true that before you publish, even with good intention, you have to make sure you investigate so that you are appropriate and accurate?
journalists do that?
No,
Well,
some journalists don't do that.
journalists-
And that is exactly where
The
my
good ones
point
do that.
of argument is. Journalists must try to go beyond what they know. Even You know, some people will try to hide behind what is
Now let
written
me
on 26.
now let me tell you. Now let me. That was just one case. Now let me tell you an instance where you, as a journalist, if you are found guilty under this law, you could be said to be a convict, a criminal. Now, if you want to proceed further in life, to take up other job, because you have had that criminal record of having convicted under this law, what was going to happen to Dr. Spencer before he was appointed Minister of Information was that he was a journalist and he wrote something that the junta regime felt was bad, and he was found guilty under that law.
Under the same law?
Yes, under this law, same law. No, I'm saying because I'm saying
what were the specifics?
Now, he was actually allowed to become minister because it was clear that he was actually convicted. His conviction was a miscarriage of justice. So you see this.
How do you say he was a miscarriage?
How could he have been?
But the law was used.
How could he have been appointed minister when he's
books.
got a criminal record? Look, and you and I know you will never be appointed minister when you have a criminal record.
You were asked to
so you see
whether our lawyers are reliable or not reliable. And I think you said the lawyers or our judiciary is reliable. And how could this man would have been convicted if he didn't do anything wrong? So
he did not do anything wrong.
Why was he then?
But because he expressed his opinion around what was happening at the time.
In the wrong way.
Well, I mean, who determines what is wrong?
Well, the law determines what is wrong.
Spencer?
Dr. Spencer?
Yes.
Now let me tell you.
What is wrong?
Because
this was the Antwerp Diamond deal that he accused Captain Chassel.
And you and I know that he had some facts in his hand.
Some facts.
Yeah, of course. He's got some facts.
That supported his
own
publication.
That is not the focus of this argument. The focus of this argument is the fact that he was actually convicted, right? Now, but because those who came in, when the Cabal government came in, because they realized that he was actually convicted under that law, undeservedly, and that was a clear case of miscarriage of justice, he got the job.
The law was not changed.
So you see,
the law was never changed.
Did the redress come from the court, or was it based on common sense?
That
he must have been not guilty.
Yes.
No. Was that done by the court?
I am sure.
Or by common sense?
It was done by the
court.
You
see, where common sense takes
done by the court. That's the answer.
If it was done by the court,
if it was
done most times, let me tell you something. Most times,
this law works for the people of Sierra
Leone. Most times, the court is likely to favor, the power that be.
No, I disagree.
I disagree. I mean,
that's maybe assumptions.
Most times, assumptions and assumptions.
I'm very cautious when I say so, and I mean it.
You say likely. That what likely means you are not even sure if the court could be. But I believe the court and the judiciary and the whole judiciary system or service of this country goes in line with what is written in our books, which they must carry to the letter. So if somebody is found guilty or falls short of the law, and the law takes its own course, I think we must not blame the judiciary. You should not say likely to have been. I think the court of Sierra Leone is something to be trusted, or the judiciary system as a whole. So therefore, I am only saying to you, this law must be in the books to sanitize
what I'm going to say here, irrespective of the outcome of this debate. Yeah.
Absolutely. The debate, I know it will go on the side of those of us who think this law must not be repealed.
Those of us who actually feel that the law must be repealed. I am saying, irrespective of the outcome of this debate, we have had overwhelming support in recent times, and the government is going ahead. They have.
Tano, apart from the fact that you have said the law is obsolete, you have not gone beyond that to say what have been put in place to the extent that the law itself appears not only obsolete but laughable at this point.
He has not, and I will tell
what
you.
Would you say?
What
would you say?
What are the mechanisms you have put in place which are making journalists so thoroughly regulated and kept in check without being gagged that you think the 1965 Public Order Act, especially that part 5, which criminalizes libel, is standing there in disuse?
The Independent Media Commission is sufficient enough to prove that we could bank on their expertise, we could bank on their independence, and we could bank on what they have as a commission to regulate the media in this country.
Tanu Soriba, we went out on the streets of Freetown to see what other people think about it. But just before we bring that, let's see what those who are watching us and who have been sending their text messages through 044-668-842, 044-668-842 have been saying. This one says, I don't think it should be expunged. While the law is there, yet still journalists are performing their journalistic duties irresponsibly. Another one, I support the repeal of Part 5 of the Public Order Act because politicians can use it to destroy the career of a journalist out of malice. This one says the criminalizing of that law is the problem. Why should a journalist make a mistake while performing his or her duty and be seen as a criminal? Other professionals do make mistakes, but not seen as such. This other one says the law hampers the journalistic field in the country because non-journalists are afraid to invest in media business owing to the fact that if a mistake is made, the law affects both the journalist, owner and vendor. This one says, well, I think the criminal libel law must be updated rather than expunged because I follow the print and electronic media. There is so much our journalists need to learn, to name a few: objectivity, impartiality, and independent investigation. When they lack these principles, then the libel law will catch. It's coming from Jibrila. Well, now let's see what others who we met on the streets think about this criminal libel law and whether Part 5 of the 1965 Public Order Act should be expunged.
Ahmed Ormara, a Solinian journalist, managing editor of the Informant newspaper. Basically, for the repeal of the 1965 Public Order Act, for me personally, as a journalist and as a citizen of this country, I support it, and this is what we have been fighting for because we think that the law is a bad law. This law was brought in by former Prime Minister Milton Magai. Basically, at that time, was to target certain group of journalists and politicians, like the late names like Isaac J. Wallace Johnson, one of the renowned journalists in West Africa then, and also some political opponents. So they have been using it for political reason, and I think no law should be used for political reason. And then take into our consideration also, currently we live in a democratic society, civilized society. Most countries have let go the Public Order Act. And I think that, especially so the Part 5B, which criminalizes libel, I think journalists will not be sent to jail for merely, committing an offense along the line. We have doctors, sometimes they made mistakes. We have even the security people, sometimes police officers or military people, they release tear gas mistakenly. But nobody tried them for that. Nobody sent them to jail for that. So sometimes I think that, in as much as we're trying to build our democracy, we want a sustainable democracy, there is every need for the 1965 Public Order Act to be repealed because it undermines our democracy and the freedom of expression, which is also entrenched in our constitution. So I think that, SLICE together with the government should work together to find an alternative. We can't let's go the entire Public Order Act, but it has to be reviewed.
Charles Williams, my position on this matter is no. Actually, my thought on the Chapter 5 of the 1965 Act is that normally you need to question what an act or a statute is seeking to establish or seeking to achieve. For me, to remove or to expunge from that act, Part 5, we need to first know what is that part doing there. What's the part seeking to protect? It's not just to take it out, but how do we ensure that the right of other people is protected? I'm sure what we should be looking at is how do we ensure that people who handle the media do not go about saying all sort of things or writing all sort of things about other people. We have to also know that they also have their right. And we should not just talk about expunging, but we should also be looking at how do we protect the other people. For me, I always ask this critical question. If the law has been there all this while and people have caused damage to the image of so many people, imagine if it is not there, what would happen?
My name is Alfred Bobson Mansari. I support the motion that the criminal libel should be expunged from the Constitution of Sierra Leone. The reason is that will definitely enable journalists to unfold certain facts that the public may want to know about. Because without the criminal libel, it hinders on the work of a journalist in order for them to get into the root cause of certain issues that the public is yearning to know about. So I definitely support the motion that the criminal libel should be expunged from the Constitution of Sierra Leone in order for journalism to be practiced in a fair and transparent manner.
Well, my name is Christo Johnson, Veteran Journalist Union Chairman. Yes, it should be expunged. The fact here is simple. Simple in the sense that even when you say the truth, it becomes libelous in criminal libel. So you don't need it. Even when you say the truth, you can be jailed. Rather than when you say, yes, sir, the story has no fact. Even when you put the correct facts there, it becomes more serious. So what's the use you have this kind of thing? So let's have it out here.
Well, the Vox Populi has just ended with veteran journalist Christy Johnson there. Back to the studio where we have Tanu Jallo, who is spokesman, Press Freedom Committee, Sierra Leone Association of Journalists, and Soriba Samura, who is a journalist himself. Whilst Tanu is of the thinking that the 1965 Public Order Act, especially Part 5, must be expunged, Soriba Samura is of a different view. He thinks it should be updated, not expunged, because some of those wrongs that were in place which caused that law to be instituted are still around, and people could use that law being expunged to damage the reputation of some people or do character assassination, because it is still around, just as people used to do in those days. Back, we have just seen some of those, whilst some of the text messages and the people who participated in the Vox Pop were going for you, based on the fact that especially those who participated in the Vox Pop were journalists. Let's look at what the others.
Let's assume that all those who sent their text messages were not journalists, and yet 3 out of 5 who sent their SMSs said this law should be repealed.
It is a tough law, and not everybody can
said the law should be repealed.
It is a very tough law, but very simple. If it's
let me tell you, of course, you know, I'm very business minded. You know, despite the fact that I'm a journalist, I'm also a businessman. Of course, Tanu Jallo. Now, if I invest into a printing press, okay, let's say I'm not a journalist. All I want is for newspapers to come and print here, and I make money. Now, if that newspaper were to be arrested for publishing something that a member of the public or a politician thinks that is
not correct.
No,
just say so.
No, something that a politician thinks that is likely to damage their reputation. Even those of us who print for them, they are going to come after us. The vendor, the poor man on the street who sells that newspaper, they will go after him.
Would you sell what you do not know?
How do you sell it? Tanu cannot tell.
Do you just take something and sell? Is that how you sell?
Vendors?
You don't know what you sell?
Vendors?
No, that's what I'm asking.
If you are asking me, if vendors don't know what they sell.
If you are selling a newspaper full of lies, full of bad things of other things,
what newspaper is that?
You are part of.
What newspaper is that?
You are part of the dispersal.
What newspaper is that? What newspaper is that?
That's what I'm saying.
No, okay, I am saying what newspaper is that?
You are saying
that is full of lies.
No, you are saying no. What I'm saying is
if you are able to show me one newspaper.
You just said if someone is being accused of libel, it is not only the publisher.
Who the charge?
It's not only the publisher.
Yes.
It is also the printer.
Yes.
And
but also the vendor.
Yes.
Vendor, yes.
Yes. Now the truth is, why would you sell a newspaper which content You do not know.
No, you wouldn't.
Why are you selling it?
Why should you?
But this, you.
And
I
let me
don't
tell you,
get
there was
this.
a vendor
Vendors selling newspapers. Do all vendors who sell newspapers know the content of the newspapers?
I know of a vendor.
Do all vendors
I know of a vendor
who sell
wants
newspapers?
I know of a vendor.
Do they
who read just
sell?
the headline? The headline of a
Do
particular
vendors
newspaper.
take
He
newspapers
refused
to go
send that
sell
newspaper for that
based on the fact
because
that
he
they
knows
know
the
what is
implication.
India?
Of course they
Now,
should.
Do they do that?
How do they pack the papers?
They
How do they
should,
pack?
tell
How do they pack the papers?
They pack
How do they pack the papers?
Do vendors take paper to go sell because they don't know what is India or because they know what is India? Now 90% of those who sell.
No.
You can argue with me.
They do.
Why would you
Don't
sell?
we? They,
Why no?
they,
Why would you
vendors
sell?
they
sell
don't read
seditious
and write.
items.
That's just
Oh.
business they do. These are business
So you
people.
sell what you don't know.
Yes.
No, that's also bad business. Like
Yes.
and I want to remind Tamu that.
Yes, in
I
this
think
case, we
Tamu-
have vendors who are not educated, but this is how they make their living. So are you going to say because they are not educated, they must not sell newspaper?
No,
because they are not
they know.
educated.
No, because
they are not educated enough to know what is in the
there is a law which even
Because he may say
regularizes
they
them.
must know
They
which
must know
papers
which
to
papers.
accept to sell
Exactly, they
and
do.
which not to
I
accept
have
to
that
sell.
evidence of a vendor who once looked at a particular newspaper
I don't
just
get
by
this.
looking at the front page.
Isn't this
he
a
just
way to
dropped it
restrict
the
people
nonsense.
to do business?
No, it's not about restriction.
Suppose
it's
somebody
about
asks
obeying
you
the law.
whether you
It's
will
about going
sell
according to the law.
a pornographic magazine.
Beautiful. Will you?
Do we sell that here in Sierra Leone?
No.
You know when we want
If
to make
you are a
reference, we
vendor,
should be
will
more
you sell
realistic.
that? Will you?
But if we, no, that's been
But
unrealistic.
what is the difference?
That is being
what is the
unrealistic.
difference
We
between
don't do
those
that
who
here.
sell pornographic
And what
things,
just said
on social
that
media?
if I am
It's
a
exactly
vendor,
like the vendor.
would I sell a newspaper that is full of lies?
No, will you?
Would you name me one newspaper
Yes, let me tell
that
you.
is full of lies that vendors sell every day?
Oh no, you cannot
No,
say
no one
that's
says
not
that.
the reason. No,
No, you said that.
No. The thing
No,
is,
no one says
the
that.
question is, why would a vendor take a newspaper
That is full of lies.
that's it? Because if the newspaper
What-
has
what
a
do you have to-
misleading or
Just
a
like a
headline,
Just the headline.
or front page
Front
story
page.
that is full of malicious or carries malicious intent.
So by merely looking at the
But
headline,
vendors
you
No,
get to
you-
know.
vendors
No, you are
are
saying by
offended.
merely looking at the headline, you
Vendors
get to
do
know
know.
I am
that,
saying-
that an article is malicious.
Yes.
By merely looking at the headline,
You are looking.
Vendors
you are
know the
looking.
issues
You are
more than
looking.
me and you.
You are
You'll be
looking.
surprised
This is
to
No,
know.
incredible.
Latano, what you're looking at is what
Vendors know
operates
the
here.
issues.
But people who sell newspapers must know what they contain, so that you are aware of what you sell.
that is not
That
the
they
case.
rush to
No, it is.
printing houses
That
and
is how
pick
they do
papers
it.
up and sell in the morning as it happens here.
Without any
it's not
hassle or
normal.
trouble.
That is not the case.
You must know what you sell.
You must know what you
In the
sell.
case of
And the
vendors,
law
that
also
is not the
covers
case.
vendors. If you are carrying
In the case of
newspapers,
vendors, that is
if
not
you
the
are carrying
case.
Why is it
newspapers
not
with
the
you-
case?
Now, if a vendor is uneducated, so you would say because he is uneducated, he must not sell newspaper.
Ignorance of the law is no excuse.
No! He
If a
is
vendor
very
does not
innocent.
know- No,
This is a
if
very
a vendor-
innocent man
how can you
who
say
goes to
innocent?
buy
Innocent, but
newspapers
he's
to
in
sell.
business.
But just
Innocent.
because he goes there and he
Innocent,
buys
but
How
those
do you
newspapers.
call? How would you call the businessman's papers? The vendor.
Innocent,
What
but
are
he
the
are in
papers?
business.
What are the papers to him?
Commodities.
Good. Would you sell rotten bread in a shop? Or
No,
expired cheese?
that analogy it does not hold.
Okay.
No, it does not
No,
hold
it
at all.
does.
You can't
Well,
compare the two.
it's a good analogy.
No, it is
that
not.
brought. What I'm saying
You,
here-
it is not.
what I'm
How do
saying
you
here,
take up a newspaper
the
and say this
vendors-
is rotten?
Some of these vendors
Because
they know
of
the
its
issues
content.
more than even some
No, that
journalists.
analogy does not hold.
Some of these vendors understand
How do you
issues
sell-
more than some journalists.
How do you
So
sell
therefore,
a
they just come in
bread
the morning,
that you
they
know
look
that
at-
it is rotten?
And let me
I
tell
don't
you-
have to be educated to know that this bread is rotten and I'm not
Some of
supposed to
these
sell it.
journalists,
But
they are
I have to
very
be
grounded in
I have to
information on
be
the ground.
uneducated
They
to
know
be able
that
to sell
there is
newspaper.
seditious-
I
that
sell
they know-
newspaper even when I
even
am not
you who
educated.
sell.
Yes, and you sell newspaper that has
That
a
is full of
story
lies.
that is malicious.
And
How
you go
often
and
do we
you
get
go
that?
and
So
sell-
if you are selling this malicious story, it means you are helping the dispersal of the bad news.
And so
I
you
am
have to
saying
be
this man is an
You are
innocent
liable to
businessman
arrest.
who goes to buy newspapers as commodities
My brother, if
and
you
he
are
comes
coming
and
to
sells them.
business in Sierra Leone,
That's how he makes
if you
his
are coming to
daily
invest in
bread.
business in Sierra Leone, you
Is
must understand the
isn't
law.
it just like selling narcotic drugs?
No. Oh, you and I know that narcotic is contraband. It is,
So why
it is
can't-
prohibited.
why do
So
you think-
do
why
you
do
want
you
to
think-
compare newspapers as commodities to narcotics? No, that analogy does
But
not
it's the
hold.
same business, so how can you tell me
It does not
somebody
hold.
knows
Narcotics
Tanu,
And newspaper,
will
you compare the sale of narcotics to the sale of newspaper?
If you, let me ask you
This is incredible.
Will you take up a bundle that you very well know, or you might suspect there would be some drugs in there, just because you are traveling? Somebody can just tell you at the airport, at an airport, say, please Tanu, take this along for me.
So,
you don't even know
is that the case with selling newspapers?
If you were to be asked
Is
to-
that the case
just-
with
just
selling
in
newspapers?
just few seconds, you
It's
were to
just
say
business.
why the criminal libel law should be expunged. What would you say in few seconds?
I am saying it inhibits investment into the media landscape. It dampens the professionalism, but also discourages how do I say, people from expressing their views. You know, it's just it makes people.
So Masamura, somebody may say you have no permanent paper, you don't work for a radio station at the moment, you are just lounging around. In fact, you do not work as a full-time journalist, so you do not know how much it hurts, and you're just speaking from your careless corner.
I have been reporting for the Torchlight newspaper for 2.5 years in court, and I've reported court cases that I have never been called even to a chamber to go and even repeal a sentence in my publications or in my pieces that I wrote. But this is why I'm saying now I have gone independent, because I know.
And some journalists may say you're not a
Exactly.
journalist after all because you don't stand with the crowd of journalists.
I am. It's not that I am. Not
I can
standing
say
with the crowd of
he's
journalists.
alone now.
I am,
We have the
because
public.
It is not
We
only
have
when you're
government.
with the crowd that you're
We
saying
have
the
the
truth.
international
Some
community.
people
On
might
that
not
note,
want
we
to
end
follow
this
the
edition
crowd.
of National Encounter that came to
Some
you
might
from
not
the
want to
Zero
join the
Broadcasting
crowd
Corporation.
because the crowd
Thank
is
you
not
very
there.
much for being part of this program. If there's an issue you think is of utmost importance that we must debate here, please feel free to send it to us to National Encounter at slbc.sl or contact us at slbc.sl. We'll respond. You may come with your suggestion handwritten and drop by the reception area of Broadcasting House, and we will respond to you. Thank you very much for being part of all this. Tanu Jallow and Suriba Samura have been sparring, in fact, stuggins out here at Broadcasting House this evening, and I would like them to have a handshake to assure us that nothing is wrong with their relationship. They are journalists of different views at the moment. They may be uniformed in the future, but we don't know. At the moment, they are parallel lines. Thank you once again. This program was produced for radio and TV by Hawana Tukonte. My name is Samuel Valcastle from Broadcasting House of New England. Good night.
Real people, live in studio, tough topics, loaded questions.
And the question is, should employees reveal their HIV and AIDS status to their employers? That's the question whether the university has been fulfilling the desire. The question to be answered is whether the question being asked is on the question we have at hand, which is whether...
It's the weekly debate that keeps them sparring.
The intention of National Encounter is to bring you very topical and debatable issues that are of vital national importance.
So could you show us now that there are no hard feelings with a handshake?
National Encounter, every Thursday at 7 p.m.